here today. So Malta, as we've seen, has an open arm attitude towards iGaming companies and has seen many corporations and household names flocking to our island. Brexit has also done its piece and created more interest from big players. But it's not just the major gaming companies that have been beating apart to our island. The island has also found fans amongst B2B suppliers and service providers. With this in mind, we understand that Malta today is offering a 360-degree supporting gaming ecosystem. Today we are lucky to have with us 5 exceptional game changers who play pivoting roles within large corporations within the industry. We will be discussing the importance of having a rolling strategy and ensuring that something that is in place, a framework that does its bit, can keep us ahead of the curve. So with this being said, we are going to be discussing the importance of having a rolling strategy and what does it really mean. It's not an opening act to a budget, but very much a live framework which enables organizations to leverage on its resources. Let's assume we're just about to hold a strategic workshop and we do understand our pain points and the fact that we've got copycat syndrome in terms of tried and tested games, gaming platforms. We have a mature ecosystem with very tight crawling space. We obviously need strong network reliability. Staff who seem to complain quite often about routine work, and that is a killer to motivation. High costs related to compliance, reliability. Yes, there's an element of social disapproval, advertising bans, amongst others. These are very much subjects we'll be discussing throughout the day. With this in mind, we understand that these pain points are very much part of our strategic plan. Gisbert, if I could reach out to you, what formula are you currently adopting in order to integrate these elements into your strategy?
Well, it sounds a little bit gloomy when it's said like that, and even the first session. I think the good thing is that people will not stop to gamble, and gambling is growing, and I think that has to be, the first acknowledgement when you look at whatever you're going to do, that although things are changing, there's still growth. I believe it's a good future for this industry, despite everything we see. So the adaptations to the environment becomes, of course, critical to succeed in this. You said a lot of things, and I think you said a range of things that you have to adapt to.
Yes.
For us, it's of course difficult because we happen to operate in most of those markets that were mentioned here in the session before, where we go through those changes today. But the adaptation that you do within the market, of course, you need to be fast, and if you're faster than your competitors to change, you have a great opportunity to grow more than your competitor, and then there is also the geographical expansion element. There is a lot of growth in this beautiful industry in many other countries though. So I think also that that is something we will see more and more of, and then you need to make sure that you're able to focus on maintaining and growing your core business while you tap into those global opportunities that are still there.
Very interesting indeed. Nigel, if I could turn on to you, you have definitely been shaking up a monopolized product from inception, offering new experiences to players. How has this been possible?
Well, Vanessa, I think probably personally been luck and a bit of timing as well. Obviously, not many other people were doing what we were doing when we first came to the market, probably about 2013, primarily in Germany. At that time, the German state lottery operators, about 16 of them, had just woken up to the fact that online was probably a place they ought to be going to fuel some growth. And I think we started up with some very good IP, some very good domain names, some very clever SEO. And on the back of some of the marketing they were doing, I think we were very lucky to have a quick start out the gate where we were cash flow positive and profitable in the early days. I mean, it's been helpful in that a lot of our competitors really are monolithic monopolies who haven't really had the need to compete.
Okay.
You know, the pressures are probably from government, not from customers, not from shareholders in terms of growth. So I think the ability for us and a lot of the people on this panel here, ability to move and be more agile and to move with the times, I think is a great advantage. Focusing on our core product, which is online, rather than not having distractions of the land-based side, has certainly been an advantage. And just bringing in sort of innovative products, as you mentioned, for an industry which for over 100 years probably hadn't really changed, you know. So bringing in features that, you know, people can double their jackpots, they can protect the numbers they've got if someone else wins those numbers. People like that, and they like the change, really. What is relatively was a boring product.
Okay.
I think key, though, for the offering we gave people was the ability to seek jackpots in other countries. Because what people were focusing on very much so was the big jackpots in their own market. And they're not always around. I mean, anyone around here today would love to win 10 million, but it's 100 million, which gets people going, and our numbers go stratospheric. So, and obviously once the jackpot hits one country, it's pretty boring then for the next few weeks till it builds up. So the ability to offer that jackpot in a number of markets, 30 odd markets around the world, I think is a key differentiator from us. Bringing in casino games, instant win games into our offering, it really helped a lot as well. And I suppose one of the fundamental distinguishers was our robust insurance product, which allowed us to do all that. Not only allows us to offer that product to some of our competitors as well, and other casino companies, but certainly underwrites all our offering and allows us to pay out some of the biggest prizes in online gaming. We paid a 90 million prize out last year, for instance. So I think that's a key differentiator. So that's, I think, how we were able to do it.
Interesting, very interesting in terms of key differentiators and takeaways. Richard, if I could turn to you.
Sure.
We talk about growth and key success stories and milestones achieved. However, we need to also bear in mind near-term obstacles in terms of how we go about navigating through our strategy. Your take on this?
So from our perspective, I think some of the near-term challenges that we face as a sports betting provider sort of resolve around some of the things you mentioned in your opening remarks. So I think the number one sort of headwind obstacle that our clients are facing are obviously increasing competition and the maturing ecosystem, specifically in Europe. So from an SBTech perspective, that means that we need to develop very compelling product offering for our clients to be able to outperform. It means that we need to have, you know, top percentile stability performance. Again, giving our sort of partners and operators that ability to sort of perform in the market. So for us to continue to be successful, that's, I think, a key element. And then sort of dovetailing from that, and Jasper mentioned it as well, and in the opening remarks, I think with the maturing ecosystem we're seeing in Europe, a lot of operators are looking to expand outside of Europe. And so one of the challenges, you know, we face at SBTech is just being able to sort of manage growth on multiple fronts. Now, I'm not complaining, it's a nice problem we have. We've been very successful winning deals with the Swedish lottery and Oregon lottery and the Finnish lottery, and we're obviously expanding in the US. We're also looking to expand in Africa. So one of the key sort of obstacles and challenges we face, and I think a lot of the operators in the industry, is just trying to manage that growth is very important. And then I think finally, and again you touched on it, I think responsible gaming. Okay. And I think that's both a near-term, medium-term and long-term issue that we all face here. And I think internally we talk about this sustainable lifetime value, and what we're referring there is we try to give our operators sort of more real-time tools to be sort of more proactive than reactive, and I think that's going to be a very important element that we all have to get to grips to for us to be successful over the medium to long term. That's an area that we're really sort of focusing on.
Interesting. With that being said, we very much think of external relations and how that impacts us. And we're currently experiencing a situation where we have a maturing industry, whereby externalities are impacting our business model across a number of avenues. If we had to look at yourself, Jean-Luc, and think of us as being strategists, how would you go about preempting and adapting to these changes, obviously to safeguard our financial ambitions?
So then the first thing that you really need to do is make sure that you have a strong sense of purpose as a business, because without that, your compass is potentially going to be misguided. So once that's established, then pretty much every decision you make from there is dictated by your end game. So as much as there's lots of changes going on, I think the most important thing is to have a really strong direction in the first place. And for us, that's really the key element, is to focus our business around the most important things to us, and sometimes actually not be distracted by a lot of the other things that are going on in the marketplace. It is important to take note of those things, but you still actually just have to do what you are supposed to be doing as well.
Interesting. And if I may, Richard, back to you. How do you see the regulation of sports betting in the US impact the global online betting scene over the next few years?
That's a good question. I think personally, I think it'll have a very profound impact, both on a B2B level and also on a B2C level. I think if my email or mobile phone's anything to go by, you're going to see a very significant increase in terms of investment in the space. A lot of US private equity are now really looking at this. So I think that will probably start to lead to some quite cool innovations, around product and trading over the next few years. So I'd expect to see that. I think it's also going to add as an additional catalyst to M&A. I think if you look at the US, quite a few of the land-based incumbent suppliers there don't have any sports betting. So I think they'll look to add that. And I think from a B2C perspective, I personally think it's going to be a bit of a graveyard over the next 3 to 5 years. I think it's going to be very tough, so I think that will lead to some consolidation. I think we'll probably also see more markets regulate in LATAM and potentially Asia. I do think people sort of take a look at what the US is doing. And then I think finally, and I hope I'm not right about this, but I think if you look at what's happened with the NBA and the NFL in the US, where they're asking for contributions from the operators to be able to place bets on those sports, I wouldn't be surprised that associations outside of the US, in Europe and globally, start to sort of look at that and start to try and see how they can start to take a bit more of their pound of flesh from the industry to allow people to bet on their sports. So there'll be sort of key areas I'd be thinking.
Definitely food for thought. And latching on to your comment on mobile gaming, we've definitely seen improvements into mobile gaming, and this in itself has made this viable within the entertainment industry to reach out to even more players. As iGaming opens itself to a larger market and the landscape keeps shifting, at times you come across situations where people argue in terms of how well can we forecast, being that iGaming can very much have a cyclical route. Cormac, if I could get your take on this, bearing in mind that you've had exposure to other industries, roots being in the banking industry.
Yeah, as you know, I'm relatively new to the industry, so I had 20 years in financial services, so it's kind of exciting. So, well, relatively. So on a basic level, the cyclicality of even having the European Cup or the World Cup any given year changes your numbers quite significantly. But on a more macro level, and to your point, the regulatory environment we work in, I suppose I would have experienced in I suppose Australia, Ireland and the UK, banking has probably been about 10 to 5 years ahead of where we're at. And I think on Paul's comments earlier, we really need to get the industry ourselves in line with where we want to be. Because I think the regulator and ourselves both want the same outcome for our customers. It's a positive experience through responsible gambling. So with that in mind, when you're forecasting, you never forecast to fail. So I don't forecast and put my numbers to have big fines from the regulators. Probably not a wise thing to do. But there's some material game changers in there. And to compare it, I suppose, in a similarity to banking, I would look at our existing markets as the back book as such. Except we have a lot of how would you phrase it politically correctly, we have, let's say, a lot of revenue and tax people trying to get our money from us in the back book, and the regulatory environment we work in is significantly more expensive. So the high cost of compliance is somewhere you need to factor into the future. I think we have higher costs to put into our P&L than we have heretofore. So for that to me is significant. The other similarity I would see in banking is cross-sell of existing products.
Okay.
So obviously banking would have a similar issue. So in terms of ourselves, we would see obviously cross-sell as a key bit for our existing market, but really speed to market to new markets is where we see the growth. So how fast can you have what I would call your black ops team to fly in and get us into a new market as quickly as possible is key to growth.
Interesting. Jean-Luc, if I can follow up on Cormac's comment, and sort of there's lots of excitement around the microgaming industry and what its future could look like. Your predictions, where do you think it's going to take us?
In the industry?
Yes. In the microgaming, as in we see quite a bit of excitement in the industry for microgaming and emerging technology and the works.
So from a technology perspective, I think I'm a bit of a geek actually. I think what I'm really excited about is data.
Yes.
And the growth of the use of data science and predictive modeling for all areas of our business really. So that's from product design through to responsible gaming. It gives us the platform to be agile and be creative. I mean, we've got decades worth of information that we can mine and use for all sorts of purposes. For me, the cloud-based services, the power of predictive modeling, machine learning are really exciting. But on the other side, I think microgaming has always been experimental anyway, though. You know, we were the first to mobile. We played around with putting slots on the watches when they first came out. And really, it's just about making sure that you stay on top of those things all the time. They're not all going to come off. Very few actually do come off in the time span that you would like.
Okay.
But you know, one day we'll be sitting playing VR slots in giant rooms this size, and I think that will be pretty cool.
Interesting times ahead. Okay, on this note, I'd like to have a few minutes to discuss the KPIs and how that fits into your strategies. So it's a given, I think we all agree that as a general point, the importance of looking at KPIs is to have the right quality of KPIs. It's not about quantity. If I can shift our conversation to Cormac and Nigel this time round, in your opinion, what are the relevant key performance indicators within the industry?
Well, I mean, the obvious ones are activations and partner profitability, etc. But I'm a simple accountant, so I look at things very simply. So recently, Paul mentioned about advertising restrictions in Italy. I spent quite a lot of time in our Italian market this year. And simple things like we had a proliferation of affiliates. That's quite a difficult market to work in Italy between cloud-based VAT. It's very exciting stuff to talk about tax. I've got to put everybody to sleep. And then also you've got like withholding tax, etc. So it's very administratively burdensome to deal with a proliferation of affiliates. So it's been efficient and effective in the number of affiliates we use. So we recently made sure we had a decent amount of affiliates giving us the right return on investment. Taking the back office account, but that's the only accountant here giving the back office view, and that's that. Nigel, you might have a more strategic view on it than me.
Nigel, your take.
You asked about affiliates. Affiliates, for betting on lottery, I think it's partly a function of the fact it's a relatively new genre in the market. I think we rely probably less on affiliates than most other gaming verticals, but though that is massively growing, and it's good that it's growing, because certainly we've probably got to about 30% of our new sign-ups now coming through affiliates, but it was probably 20% only a year and a half ago, so it's significantly climbing. But the KPIs for our team is very much about growing our affiliate network. I mean, obviously, whether they're small or large, we don't mind, we're trying to bring them in, but it's all about educating them as well in the way we want them to perform. Obviously, with affiliates, the Cormac's touched on it, you lose control a little bit.
Okay.
And obviously, with this day and age of regulatory compliance, it's vital that they behave in a manner which is appropriate to your business. So you lose control on advertising, you lose control on marketing. So a key KPI for our team is to bring them back in line to the extent they ever err. So the copy is changed. Any deviations from the compliance expected of them is taken very seriously, and quite often results in getting rid of that affiliate. So they're the key things, and particularly I think the regulatory compliance side is the main area right now.
Interesting, as high as 30%?
In our new sign-ups, yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and Jean-Luc, if I could take your take on B2B, what are your go-to KPIs?
Yeah, like you said, B2B is different to the B2C side. We're a game content aggregator, that is our business. So a lot of our regular KPIs are connected to game performance, game uptake, that sort of thing. And then the other end of our distribution channel is obviously our customers and our partners. So we do have a lot of metrics that are centered around satisfaction of our customers, which are operators, and driving strategies to make sure that that's the case, and we're building off of that distribution channel. But then also there's an amount of innovation that we need to measure. And I was listening to a panel the other day, and they were talking about the struggles of bringing innovation into the business. We have, over the last couple of years, adopted a really strong innovation culture. And one of the things we measure is the rate of ideation and how that translates eventually through to real-world products. And that is through wide engagement across our entire staff base. And that's quite an interesting metric to follow, actually, over time, to see what actually comes from the people who work with us.
Definitely food for thought. If we can, picking on this point, if we can sort of shift our direction towards industry changes and M&A, we definitely are in an industry that moves quickly, and we're seeing regulation changes. We've had reference earlier to margins being squeezed, landscape shifting due to M&A activity. In order to remain relevant, iGaming companies need to stay ahead of these changes and stay close to the factors that are shaping it. Just David, I could reach out to you. How can M&A help you capture new markets and capitalize on these opportunities?
Well, a lot, of course, comes down to speed to market, to enter market, and that's something we have done in various cases in order to get the foothold somewhere. We have done it through acquisitions. So it can help to facilitate a lot. Of course, you can look at some of the existing market where there is a likelihood there will be more consolidation happening within that market as well. I think when it comes to the opportunities within geographical expansion, in an ideal world, of course, you can do it all yourself because you have the technology teams and the infrastructure set up for that, but that's not always the case. And then an acquisition to enter a market can be a very good route to market.
Okay. Cormac, in this case, we're going to walk into an area which has been made reference to earlier as well, in terms of we're understanding that at the moment there are potential discussions on, again, a potential merger between your mother company, Flutter, and the Stars Group. This is a mega merger which, should it go through, can place you as being one of the biggest players in the market. Your views on this merger?
Yeah, it's a very exciting time. Busy weekend already on it. Yeah, obviously my personal views, I have to be careful what I say, but what's out there in the market already is things I can refer to in my own personal view. But in my personal opinion, obviously, we talked about cross-sell of products. Growth is a key thing for us. But to do it in a responsible way, I think we talked about the high cost of compliance, and that larger groups can implement that in a more efficient way to make the customer experience much more richer. But also in a compliant way between AML, KYC, fraud teams. So using that expertise to cross all the products we're going to hopefully be in a position to sell and all the brands we're selling. So it's very exciting from that perspective. Obviously the bean counter bit, what's already been announced is some cost savings from synergy, but the main bit is the exciting bit is the growth in the market. America is obviously a big key player for all of us. We can see that there's no hidden surprises there in the market, how well that's growing for ourselves and potentially Stars Group. So yeah, no, it's been a busy time, but it says a potential merger at the moment. Nothing's been physically signed yet as such, but it's a really positive time for all of us, and I think it's going to be beneficial to the customer in the ultimate end result, hopefully.
Okay, thanks for sharing that with us.
No problem.
Okay, we move on to one of our final questions, but definitely worth spending a couple of minutes, and that's the leadership aspect. You know, we talk about effective leadership and how crucial it is, but that in itself puts a lot of pressure on us as CEOs in order to perform to our best of abilities. There's an evolving skill set for an iGaming CEO pivoting around macro-managing, i.e. effectively putting a strategy into place, but even more important, the agility to flex that strategy, being the environment we work in. Nigel, you seem to have quite a diverse background from legal to banking. Do you think this is crucial for a CEO for the position he holds?
No, not at all. I think CEOs come from all sorts of different backgrounds, frankly. I think having a legal and banking background,
Yes.
call it here, I think has certain advantages in certain circumstances, like any background. But I mean, legal, for instance, obviously I came in the industry in 2005 and I've never known a year where we haven't been hit by some regulatory shift. So that certainly has an advantage. In 2006, the UIGA was a big case in point. We lost 78% of our revenue overnight, the company I was then working for. That certainly requires a bit of shifting in terms of your strategy. So certainly a legal background helps in that respect. The banking side is obviously helpful from an M&A perspective or capital markets perspective to fund that M&A or to create an efficient balance sheet or even monetize the value of your company for your shareholders. That's clearly helpful. But most importantly, I think, is being a good all-rounder. I think having a clear, decisive strategy, one that the message is very clear to all staff at all levels, not just the leadership team. Being able to shift that strategy when you need to, particularly, say, because of a regulatory intervention, which often happens. And it's all about having a great team around you. I don't read business books, but I think one of the few I did read was by Jack Welch. He said he used to go from big division to division in GE, and he always surrounded himself by the best people to make him look good. And I think that's very key. It's all about the team. It's not about the individual, in my view.
Definitely. Jean-Luc, your take on, in terms of the leadership qualities required as we sit in key positions?
What Nigel said.
He did sum it up very nicely.
No, a lot of truth in everything that Nigel was saying. I think I'm a strong believer in servant leadership. And that is all around surrounding yourself with strong people and then getting out of the way, as they say, and enabling people to do their jobs. And that is based off trust, though. So I think the foundation of everything in terms of good leadership comes from a trust that you have with your staff. And that comes from empowerment and real empowerment, not just the word, and then strong communication.
Definitely. Latching on to that, Richard, if you had to choose your successor, what would you look out for?
So do you know something I don't? I think, obviously, going on what Nigel said, but I think if I was going to sort of highlight a few key criteria, I think you need to be, and these are very specific to my company, but I think you need to be very strategic. You need to be able to, I think, build a vision. This industry is changing very, very rapidly, so you need to be able to build a vision to take the business from sort of here to sort of 2 or 3 years down the road. And you also need to be able to put together a workable plan to be able to deliver it. It's all well and good to have a vision, but you need to be able to deliver it. So you need to be able to have the ability to put that together. And I think we run a very complex business, so I think the ability, and also we're in 10 different locations, so I think the ability to be very strong around team building and getting different functional units and individuals to be able to work together, to be able to deliver that vision is very, very important. And as Nigel said, you surround yourselves with the best people possible. And I think, again, going back to what we've been discussing this morning, you need to be a real forward thinker. You need to plan for the future. Again, specifically with this industry, it changes very rapidly from a product level, from a regulatory level. So you need to be able to monitor, be able to keep an eye on the sort of near term to be able to plan for the future. And I think finally, again, a theme that we discussed this morning is, I think if I was going to look at a candidate right now for SB Tech over the next sort of 3 years, I think somebody that has a strong skill set and experience in M&A. I think we're all seeing, obviously, Cormac and the bigger companies in the industry are merging and getting bigger, and I think that trend is going to continue. So I think, if I look today, sort of 3 to 5 years out, I think specifically on the B2B side, there's going to be a lot more consolidation, and so I'd be looking for a CEO as a sort of strong CV when it comes to M&A.
Definitely. words some truth. And Jesper, we understand that you've recently launched One Bitson, and which certainly showcases your CSR. That CSR is very high on Bitson's radar. In addition, from our previous conversations, you've mentioned that you've got 60 nationalities on board, 75% of which are millennials. Sort of it clearly highlights the importance of agility as part of a CEO's DNA. Your take?
Yes, I mean, we have an incredibly diverse workforce, and the One Betson initiative, it was more coming of, we do, I think a lot of the gaming companies do, but we have not always been really good in showing it and driving it on a higher level is the CSR initiatives that we actually do. So for us, that was a way to visualize that and not just engage the greater community with partners, stakeholders, shareholders, and so forth, but our staff in particular. It's important, I think, as a CEO to understand also your workforce, and also in our case, 75% is millennial, almost 75%. So it's not, I mean, in the end, it's about the individual person, but you can see what is the trends and what is important for people in certain groups today and learn from that as well when you look at adapting some of the initiatives you do within the company.
Okay. It seems like we got ourselves to discuss quite a few, and here we've got a few interesting questions from our floor. Seems like, Cormac, you've created interest as we've discussed the Flutter potential merger. Okay, so who do you think could be your major competitors within the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, obviously the big players are out there, between Bet365, etc. So, personally, I may see the market. If you look at the banking market, it's generally got 5 big players in the UK. I don't know if 5 is a good number, but I think we may see ourselves getting to a point where we've got 5 big players across the group with a whole lot of B2B suppliers supporting that. It's all about channels to market. So I think if you've got an efficient, safe way of channels to market, that's working in alongside your regulators in a compliant manner. I think that's where I think the market needs to get to, and do it in an efficient way and a manner that is good for our customers and good for us and our shareholders. So I do see it consolidating, as Jesper has pointed out too. So it would be nice, hypothetically speaking, to see ourselves as the largest player in the market, right? Yeah.
I spent 8 years as an M&A director.
Yes.
Very little happened really. And then suddenly the last 5 years we've seen incredible consolidation. Everyone was saying it's going to happen and nothing ever did. But you've just seen it now, and I agree with Cormac. I think you're polarising into several very large companies, I think.
Yes. It seems like, in fact, there has been another question literally on this line of thinking where there seems to be the notion that the bigger players are just going to get bigger. So it really ties into what we possibly might have shared just a couple of minutes ago, but we're in agreement that that's something that could potentially happen. Okay, if we had to look at one other question, okay, how do you see the US market as it continues to regulate impact the status quo?
It's interesting. I'm more the Paddy Power side of things than the fan duo side of it, but just from observations, each state is like a different country over there. So as the states open up, it's obviously the big growth area. And you can see a lot of it's well known where the growth is already announced in certain market announcements. So one state opening up there is equivalent to a massive country over here in Europe. So it's really positive, and that's where I'd see the growth in the short to medium term in any of the larger players.